Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is my 1789 to 1800 or American Pageant Chapter 10 short answer question prediction. So, I have here Alexander Hamilton had a 5-part financial plan for the young nation that he developed during his time as Secretary of Treasury on George Washington's cabinet. And then A, briefly describe one facet of Hamilton's economic plan and its purpose. So briefly describe one part of his plan and its purpose. And part B, briefly explain one way Jefferson's ideas for the American economy differed from Hamilton's ideas from the American economy. And finally, briefly describe Washington's stance on the conflict between Jefferson and Hamilton. So go ahead and give yourself 13 minutes and answer A, B, and C, and then I'll go over some possible answers. Okay, hopefully you were able to answer all 3 parts. So now we're going to look at what ChatGPT said to this prompt. So for the first part, for part A, briefly describe one facet of Hamilton's economic plan and its purpose. ChatGPT said Hamilton's plan for establishing a national bank. So that's one part of his BFAT plan, or his financial plan. It's like a memory device. So this was the Bank of the United States. That's what it decided to mention. You could have also talked about excise taxes, specifically on whiskey, funding at par, and assumption of state debts or tariffs. So it said Hamilton's plan for establishing a national bank was central to his vision for the U.S. economy. The Bank of the United States was designed to provide a stable national currency, facilitate loans to businesses, and help manage government debts. So at the first sentence, it's talking about the facet of his plan, right, the national bank. And the second sentence, it addresses its purpose. So to provide a stable national currency, because before, like in very early, I guess this is still very early U.S. history, but in the colonies, when they were still colonies and when they first got their independence, the national currency and the paper money was worth close to nothing. So the Hamilton's National Bank was designed to provide a stable national currency to facilitate loans to businesses so that businesses could build up and the economy would therefore grow, and to help manage government debts. It also aimed to strengthen federal authority over the economy and create a relationship between the government and wealthy investors. So that's another. If you talked about the national bank, that's an important thing to mention, that it aimed to strengthen federal authority over the economy, because we know that Hamilton believed in a stronger federal government, and it created a relationship between the government and wealthy investors. So if you mentioned the relationship between government and wealthy investors, that's also important because this relates to Hamilton's belief in the trickle-down effect, where the government would favor wealthy investors who would therefore, or who would in turn give money to the national government, and the wealthy investors would help the national bank and different businesses prosper, and eventually all that wealth at the top would trickle down to the masses because the economy would be prospering. Okay, so for the second question, briefly explain one way Jefferson's idea, or I guess that's not a question, but for part B, briefly explain one way Jefferson's ideas for the American economy differed from Hamilton's ideas for the American economy. ChatGPT said one way Thomas Jefferson's vision for the U.S. economy was largely agrarian, or it focused on farming. He believed in an economy based on independent farmers and feared that Hamilton's focus on banking and industrialization would concentrate power among urban elites, leading to corruption and a loss of individual liberty. So mentioning individual liberty is important because we know that Jefferson believed more in states' rights and the rights of the people, and believed that we should have a weaker federal government. as opposed to Hamilton's belief that we should have a strong federal government. And finally, in contrast, Hamilton favored a strong central government that supported commerce, manufacturing, national bank. So that's important because if you're going to say what Jefferson believed, you have to mention this ideas of Hamilton that differ from the ideas of Jefferson that you mentioned. So you would make sure you mention that Jefferson focused more on farms and less on industry, and he also believed in a weaker federal government. So for part C, briefly describe Washington's stance on the conflict between Jefferson and Hamilton. ChatGPT said, President George Washington tended to side with Hamilton's vision for the nation, though he valued the input of both Hamilton and Jefferson. Washington supported Hamilton's financial plan, including the creation of the National Bank, as he believed it was necessary to stabilize the country's finances. So that's important because Washington refused to veto the bank. He supported the Hamilton's bank because he agreed that it would help the economy of the nation. And ChatGPT closes it off with, however, he remained wary of the growing political divisions and hoped to maintain unity in his administration. So that's very important to mention, that he feared the formation of political parties and that he wanted unity. That's very important because that kind of reflects what Washington states in his farewell address, where he talks about avoiding political parties because they caused divide in the nation. He wanted unity in his cabinet and in his administration. Also, go ahead and look in the description for a 1789 to 1800 or American Pageant Chapter 10 Quizlet so you can review for all this stuff. And thanks for watching.